So good morning, and thank you as always for coming out earlier to hear my seminar. I really enjoyed last night, and so I'm so glad the ones that came. I thought it was a really good evening, and thank you for coming. I'd like to do this more than just Night to Be Much Observed. It would be nice for us to gather together in just a comfortable atmosphere to spend time together. So the title is The Things We Leave Behind. The Things We Leave Behind. And you don't have to sit there, Adam, if you don't want to. But this phrase can be viewed from different perspectives, and I will talk about some of those perspectives and open it up for discussion at the end. I heard a phrase recently: you create your past by what you are doing right now. You create your past by what you are doing right now. So I'll rephrase it. If you don't want something to be part of your past, the things you leave behind, then change what you are doing. As we have gone through the last few weeks thinking about and preparing for Passover and unleavened bread, part of that process is reflecting on anything in our lives that we should discard or leave behind. Another part of that reflection is on what we want to change in ourselves to follow God more closely. The fruits of the Spirit we want to embrace a little tighter. Praying God will enable us to be more like Him. To make a conscious effort to be a light in all the things we leave behind. In preparing for the spring holy days, I include spring cleaning. For me personally, the leavening goes much deeper than removing leaven and leavened products from my kitchen, as Adam smiles with the help he's done this week to do that. Each person has to decide what it means in Exodus 12 to put leaven out of your house. It does not say we have to spring clean along with putting the leavening out of our homes. This is my choice, so no pressure on you from me to do spring cleaning. I find that over a year's time, many things find their way into my home that I don't need or even want. This can also be true of attitudes and habits. When my house and physical possessions are in order, my mind is more at ease. When I physically declutter, my inner self feels less cluttered. The song Things We Leave Behind by Michael Card focuses on the perspective of leaving negative things behind. Most of us have heard the song, but here are some of the lyrics. There sits Simon, so foolishly wise. Proudly he's tending his nets. And Yeshua calls, and the boats drift away, and all that he owns he forgets. But more than the nets he abandoned that day, he found that his pride was soon drifting away. And it's hard to imagine the freedom we find from the things we leave behind. As a vice, pride is one of those traits that we want to leave behind. So back to the song lyrics. Matthew was mindful of taking the tax and pressing the people to pay. But hearing the call, he responded in faith and followed the light and the way. And leaving the people so puzzled he found, the greed in his heart was no longer around. And it's hard to imagine the freedom we find from the things we leave behind. Greed is another trait we want to leave behind. Someone might be greedy for attention, others for power, seeking control over situations and or people. Greed can manifest in different actions. I'm going to read the next lyrics as written by Michael Card, but I don't believe Yeshua is my possession. I don't own him, although I understand the point Michael Card is making. Every heart needs to be set free from possessions that hold it so tight, because freedom's not found in the things that we own. It's the power to do what is right. With Yeshua our only possession, then giving becomes our delight, and we can't imagine the freedom we find from the things we leave behind. We show a love for the world in our lives by worshiping goods we possess. And Yeshua says, lay all the treasures aside and love God above all the rest. Because when we say no to the things of the world, we open our hearts to the love of the Lord, and it's hard to imagine the freedom we find from the things we leave behind. Matthew 13:45 and 46. Matthew 13:45 and 46. I'll be reading from my notes, so it may be hard to keep up with it. The kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls, who on finding a pearl of great value went and sold all that he had and bought it. We have found what is most important in following Yeshua's teachings, to put God first in our lives. A term that gives me a word picture about what we leave behind is the word wake. Its most common definition is the wave a boat leaves behind as it moves through the water. The wake disperses an amount of energy based on the boat's speed and the amount of water the boat displaces. The wake can endanger others. It may rock, swamp, or capsize other boats. As we move through our days, we come in contact with others, and that contact changes their energy field, the emotions, thoughts, and peace they feel. We affect others in ways we may not be aware of, positively or negatively. As a boat leaves a wake behind, I propose that we also leave a wake behind as we interact with others. Matthew 25, verses 35 through 40. Matthew 25, verses 35 through 40. So I'm breaking into the story. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Then the righteous will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? And when did we see you a stranger and welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will answer them, Truly I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these my brothers and sisters, you did it to me. The good deeds, the thoughtfulness, the generosity they offered others left a legacy of love. They lived life with awareness and intention, without thought for the reward. It did not go unnoticed by God. Contrast this with those spoken of in Matthew 25, 42 through 45. Matthew 25, 42 through 45. Excuse me. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me. Naked, and you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison, and you did not visit me. Then they will also answer, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not minister to you? Then he will answer them, saying, Truly, I say to you, as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me. The people referred to in these verses had not left a positive legacy. They were surprised, asking, when did these opportunities happen? They missed the point somewhere along the path and did not leave a legacy of love. The Bible recounts many stories of people's lives and what they left behind. A legacy of courage, devotion, and dedication to God, encouragement, and hope. Others, a legacy of destruction and death. Many others somewhere along the spectrum. As human beings, we stumble and fall. Sometimes we slip temporarily as we walk this earthly path. The important point is finding our way once again and fully reconnecting with God. I'm going to elaborate on two stories in the Bible. The first one is about Naomi and Ruth in the book of Ruth. To refresh our memories, Naomi was the wife of Elimelech and had two sons, Mahlon and Chilion. Because of a famine, the family of four fled to Moab. After a time, Naomi's husband died, and her two sons married Moabite women. Their marriages were frowned upon. Excuse me. Because the Moabites were not a godly people. After more time passed, the two sons died before having children. In Naomi's eyes, their family line officially ended. The trials she faced just kept stacking on top of one another. The trials seemed relentless. Life would never be the same again. Her hope was gone. She was helpless and defenseless. These trials probably spanned over several years. Naomi decided to go back home, back to her home country, and live the remainder of her life alone. Her daughters-in-law began the journey with her, but Naomi insisted they go back to Moab and find husbands. We know Orpah went back and Ruth went with Naomi. It would appear Ruth learned how to be a godly woman from Naomi's example. In Hebrew, Naomi means to be pleasant, delightful, or sweet. However, at this particular time, Naomi had some bitterness and wanted to change her name to Mara, which means bitterness in Hebrew. In Ruth 1, verses 20 and 21, Ruth 1, 20 and 21, she says, "Do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me?" Naomi temporarily lost her identity and hope for the future. She felt self-pity and lost sight of her value as a child of God for a season. Our culture is different than Naomi's, but our trials can be just as relentless as hers. However, there is more to her story, just like there's more to our stories. Naomi's one last hope was a kinsman redeemer, someone in the extended family who could step up and continue her family line. As we know, Boaz was that kinsman redeemer who married Ruth, and they had a son named Obed. In Ruth chapter 4, Naomi's neighbors pointed out that God had not left her without a guardian. They observed that Ruth loved Naomi more than if she had had 7 sons. None of Naomi's prayers are recorded, but God saw her pain, distress, and the desires of her heart. There was a gap in Naomi's faith for a brief time, but God used what Ruth observed before and after that time to transform Ruth's life. In the end, Naomi's family line continued through Ruth. The Bible says she was the great-grandmother of King David. Naomi and Ruth's inspiring legacies live on for us to read about. I chose this next woman for my second example. 2 sentences are attributed to her in the Bible. I want to look at and share with you the backstory I see behind her words. I have never heard anything positive said about her, only condemnation. A legacy she probably knew nothing about. What I'm going to say about her, I have never heard anyone else say. This is my perception, and I offer this view for you to consider. As one woman to another, I choose to remember her for the blessings God gave to her after the relentless trial was over. She went into a dark place in her grief, and I think God was with her and restored her blessings after the trial had passed. The woman is Job's wife. In Job chapter 1, it's recorded that Job had 7 sons and 3 daughters, 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 donkeys, and many servants. The 7 sons held a feast in their houses, each on his appointed day, and they would invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. I think it is noteworthy that they all chose to spend time together. I believe that is a positive reflection on the atmosphere they grew up with in the house of Job and his wife. After their party was over, Job would offer sacrifices for each of them in case his sons had sinned and cursed God in their hearts. I'll come back to that phrase a little later, curse God in their hearts. In Job chapter 1, verse 13, Job chapter 1, verse 13, the nightmare began. His 500 yoke of oxen and 500 donkeys were stolen, and the servants attending them were killed. Only one servant escaped. On the heels of that news, another servant came to say the fire of God fell from heaven on the 7,000 sheep and the attending servants and consumed them. Only he escaped to give Job the report. Next, the third servant came to say the 3,000 camels were stolen and all the servants were killed but him. Then the most devastating news that the wind collapsed the house where all 10 of his children were eating, and they all had died. And last, Job was afflicted with loathsome sores, as the Bible says, from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. The account is written from the perspective of what Job was enduring. We only hear about Job's wife in Job chapter 2, verses 9 and 10. Job chapter 2, verses 9 and 10. These are the words that have condemned her. Then his wife said to him, "Do you still hold fast your integrity? Curse God and die." But he said to her, "You speak as one of the foolish women would speak. Shall we receive good at the hand of God, and shall we not receive evil?" In all of this, Job did not sin with his lips. Note, he said she spoke like a foolish woman, not that she was a foolish woman. Here we see that phrase again, to curse God. Job had offered sacrifices for his children after their parties, in case they had cursed God in their hearts. As bad as that is, and we should never do that, Job believed God would forgive when he offered sacrifices on their behalf. I want to look at the losses that Job's wife experienced during this unbelievable trial. These were her 10 children as well. There's nothing I see to indicate that there were other wives. She carried and birthed all 10 of these children. She would have participated in their care, even though there would have been servants to help. They were adults, so she would have had a long-time relationship with all of them. Can you imagine how devastated she was that all 10 died at the same time? Maybe she thought about the what-ifs. If she had only said or done something that might have kept this from happening. Maybe she wondered if more trials were coming. She had been blessed, being the wife of the greatest man in all the East. Now that was all gone. The respect she had went with it. Job was extremely ill, and she could only watch him suffer. There wasn't anything she could do. She couldn't touch him because of the boils, nor could he hug her to comfort her in the loss of their children. Their wealth was gone. If Job died as a woman during that time, what would happen to her? Her sons were gone too. She may have heard Job's comments. One of those is in Job 7, verse 11. Job 7, verse 11. "Therefore I will not restrain my mouth. I will speak in the anguish of my spirit. I will complain in the bitterness of my soul." Job 10, verse 1. Job 10, verse 1. "I loathe my life. I will give free utterance to my complaint. I will speak in the bitterness of my soul." Job's words and anguish are recorded, but his wife's are not. Can you imagine losing everything all at one time? I believe in her deep grief, shock, and anguish over the loss she was experiencing. She made the rash comment to Job to curse God and die. We offer grace and compassion to Naomi for her comments that I mentioned earlier, because we can see the distress she was in. Can we do the same for Job's wife? I believe God can, and he did, as we read the end of the story in Job chapter 42. Job chapter 42. God restored to Job twofold for what he had lost. He became the father of 7 more sons and 3 daughters. There were no women so fair as Job's daughters. He gave them an inheritance among their brothers. There's no mention of another wife. It would seem that Job's wife was also blessed and restored from the loss she endured. These 10 children were hers as well. While this story is devastating, I feel it gives a tremendous amount of hope. God can bring good from any tragedy we might have. I have been taught through the years that Job left a positive legacy, but his wife's legacy was condemnation. I see that from what man says. I don't see that from what God says. If someone overheard two sentences from us on the absolute lowest, most stressful time of our lives, what would our legacy be in their eyes? We can never walk in another person's shoes to the extent of completely knowing their joy and pain. God can see all, and he is very forgiving. Matthew 18:21 and 22. Matthew 18:21 and 22. And Keith, I had to smile with you using that same scripture yesterday. Then Peter came up and said to him, Yeshua, Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me, and I forgive him? As many as 7 times? Yeshua said to him, I do not say to you 7 times, but 70 times 7. Matthew 6:14 and 15. Matthew 6:14 and 15. If you forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father also will forgive you. But if you do not forgive men their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. Forgiveness is an extremely important part of our lives. So now continuing on with the things we leave behind. Self-awareness is a significant element in the things we leave behind. So is being responsible and caring about the impact we have on others. We are very aware of the impact others have on us. We can feel the joy, happiness, and peace oozing from them. They lift our spirits. The energy we feel from someone who is angry pushes us off balance, even when the anger is directed at someone else. One of my good friends many, many years ago in another group told me that her husband was nice to everyone else but her. I knew them well enough to believe what she said. Her husband was not only leaving a legacy of pain for her, but an example for his sons to treat their wives the same way. I think as we continue to examine our hearts and our lives, it would be good to ask ourselves, what do we want to leave behind? As long as we are alive, we have the opportunity to change any negative impact we may have had on others that we become aware of. As I've mentioned in the past, I think I've said this to you guys, if you are really courageous and very sincere, we can ask those we are closest to what impact we are having on them. Ask them to be gentle and start with the most important area they would like to talk about. Then listen. Listen without interrupting or defending ourselves. We may want to ask for details for clarification. Then go and pray and meditate on what they said. If God convicts our hearts that they are correct, then we can go back to the person and ask how we can make the relationship better. Even if there's no strong conviction from God, there's still a problem for the other person sees in the relationship. This is an opportunity to become aware of our impact on them, to still be willing to ask how we can make the relationship better. Maybe at some point they will be brave enough to ask how they are impacting our life. How have we been impacted by what others have left behind for us? What customs, habits, emotions, physical items, or other things still affect us? Is there some problem that has been passed down and is still influencing us? Are we going to pass it on to our children as part of our legacy? Or will we decide that whatever this problem is, it's going to stop with us? We can decide, as much as it lies within our power, that we will no longer allow it to affect us or those who come behind us. In doing research for this seminar, I read many stories of family members finding out shocking details after a family member had passed. This information was found while sorting through the possessions left behind. A father or grandfather who supported a second family unknown to the first family he had at the same time. A mother who had a child she gave up for adoption before she married. Her later children didn't know they had a sibling. There were stories of people who generously supported others in need, who never knew their benefactor. Stories of sacrifices of love toward others that were only revealed after the person passed. There's a balance in doing good deeds in secret and allowing others to see the good things we do. There are many times individuals are honored during their lifetime. They serve as examples for us. Cornelius is an example in the New Testament. In Acts 10, verses 1, 2, and 22. Acts 10, verses 1, 2, and 22. So verse 1 in part, he was a centurion. Verse 2, a devout man who feared God with all of his household. He gave alms liberally to the people and prayed constantly to God. Verse 22 in part, who is well spoken of by the whole Jewish nation, was directed by an angel to go and talk to Peter. In Acts 9, verses 36 through 42, Acts 9, verses 36 through 42, Tabitha's example is unique. She was highly praised after she died for all of the acts of love she showered on others. Very shortly after she died, Peter was called to come and pray for her. Through the power of God, she was raised from the dead. I'm going to read the account in the Acts 9, 36 through 42. Now there was at Joppa a disciple named Tabitha, which means Dorcas in Greek. She was full of good works and acts of charity. In those days she fell sick and died. And when they had washed her, they laid her in an upper room. Since Lydia was near Joppa, the disciples, hearing that Peter was there, sent 2 men, entreating him, please come to us without delay. So Peter rose and went with them. And when he had come, they took him to the upper room. All the widows stood beside him, weeping and showing tunics and other garments which Dorcas made while she was with them. But Peter put them all outside and knelt down and prayed. Then turning to the body, he said, Tabitha, rise. And she opened her eyes, and when she saw Peter, she sat up. And he gave her his hand and lifted her up. Then calling the saints and the widows, he presented her alive. And it became known throughout all Joppa, and many believed in the Lord. Their testimony lives on. There's another song that paints a picture that is very inspiring to me. I've sung this song several times in the past years for special music for an encouragement of those who heard it. It's Thank You by Ray Boltz. Let's think about the lyrics as I read them. I dreamed I went to heaven, and you were there with me. We walked along the streets of gold, beside the crystal sea. We heard the angels singing, then someone called your name. You turned and saw a young man, and he was smiling as he came. He said, friend, you may not know me now. But then he said, but wait. You used to teach my Sabbath school when I was only 8. Every week you would say a prayer before the class would start. One morning when you said that prayer, I asked Yeshua in my heart. Then another man stood before you and said, remember the time? A missionary came to your church, and his pictures made you cry. You didn't have much money, but you gave it anyway. Yeshua took the gift you gave, and that's why I'm here today. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I'm a life that was changed. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I'm so glad you gave. One by one they came, far as the eye could see. Each one somehow touched by your generosity. Little things that you had done, sacrifices made, unnoticed on the earth, heaven now proclaims. And I know up in heaven you're not supposed to cry, but I was almost sure there were tears in your eyes. As Yeshua took your hand and you stood before the Lord, he said, my child, look around you, for great is your reward. The good things we do may never be known on earth except by those who receive the benefit. Even some of those actions may never be known by the beneficiary. I think the attitude behind the giving is very important. Sometimes giving needs to transpire in secret, other times to serve others in ways they need. The service is in the open for anyone in the vicinity to see. Camp Outreach is an example of that. I think that kind of giving is also very important. There's one more song that inspires me to think about what I'm leaving behind someday. The title is Find Us Faithful by Steve Green, written in 1988. Here are some of the lyrics. We are pilgrims on the journey of the narrow road, and those who've gone before us line the way, cheering on the faithful, encouraging the weary, their lives a stirring testament to God's sustaining grace. Surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us run the race, not only for the prize, but as those who've gone before us. Let us leave to those behind us the heritage of faithfulness passed on through godly lives. After all our hopes and dreams have come and gone, and our children sift through all that's left behind, may the clues that they discover, the memories they uncover, become the light that leads them to the road we each must find. Oh, may all who come behind us find us faithful. May the fire of our devotion light their way. May the footprints that we leave lead them to believe, and the lives we live inspire them to obey. Oh, may all who come behind us find us faithful. I first heard this song a cappella by Patricia, known as Pat Manley. She did a beautiful job. Pat and her husband, Pastor Terry Manley, had a physically and mentally handicapped daughter they cared for until they passed from this life. I don't know anything more about what happened to their daughter. Their faithful example lives on to inspire those of us who knew them. So these are my closing thoughts. We can go through low periods in our lives and faith and still leave a legacy of love. We can fall and get back up. Forgiveness gives us the chance to try again if we do fall. Our testimony of recovery from a trial gives strength to those facing the same problem, that there's always hope. God is always available if we want to come to Him. What a challenge and opportunity to leave footprints in another person's life, to lead them on a godly path. We can let our light, the light God allows us to share, influence another person's life. We have the opportunity to ask God, when did we see you in need of all these things? And He tells us, when you did all those things for others, you did them for me. Small acts of kindness can change lives. We have the choice of being intentional in our actions. We have a choice about what we leave behind. You can leave it on because we'll have. So I'll open it up now for any questions or comments. Okay.
Very encouraging. Thank you very much, Shirley. That was one of those messages that lift you up, that inspire you. You may even hear from Him someday. Well done. So just over that. Just over what you just gave all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's good.
Thank you.
We can all use the encouragement.
Yes. Well, in looking at the subject, what we leave behind can be negative as far as like the end of our life. But while we're here, we have the opportunity, and it is a very positive thing. So.
And you took advantage of that opportunity this morning. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I kind of right away thought about the garbage we leave behind.
Mm-hmm.
Because in my lifetime, I've been mostly self-employed,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems that all of my occupations have required me to get stuff, lots of stuff. And between hanging on to a lot of this stuff and or actually producing recyclables
Mhm.
as well as just plain old garbage. I always look at garbage as a huge indicator of what's going on in somebody's life. And
Interesting.
I used to own a garbage business. And I mean, I'm telling you right now, you can tell a lot about what's dumped out of in the back of the truck.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just very amazing to have that picture of the world. Because a lot of my people would not be paying their garbage bill. Month after month, they would not pay it, even after we give them notices.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm dumping out stuff that is just foolish decisions.
Yeah.
If you have an economical problem and you can't pay your bills, why do you have multiple pizzas and empty Pepsi bottles and all of the other things that you can imagine that people are buying when they can't pay their bills?
Mm-hmm.
So this is very interesting, and I examine that myself quite often because I produce a lot of trash. So what does that say about what's going on? I'm buying a lot of stuff. You can't produce trash unless you are buying a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have that same tendency to not leave nothing behind that could be used later. And so now I have a lot of people that'll call me up and say, hey, do you have this?
Mhm.
Because they know that likely somewhere in my archives of one of my barns, I either have this tool or this piece of metal or something, because I'm always like, fix it yourself and buy what you need to fix it, because you'll always need that tool again.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of my friends know that, oh yeah, he's got that special tool because he fixes everything. So it's good. But then sometimes finding it, knowing where I put it, and seeing how cluttered my organization skills are, it's interesting. And
Yeah.
then going through the whole thing of my dad dying, and I still have stuff left. His legacy is still in his office.
Mm.
And it's kind of like, I don't want to touch it, but I do want to examine it, because a lot of his studies, his research, a lot of his herbal medicines and recipes are still in his office, kind of like a time machine. So it's just, I went through everything else that they left behind
Mm-hmm.
and sorted it out and kept some of it and thought, oh, this is valuable, I'll add it to my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting when you say, what kind of legacy do you leave behind? And being in the garbage business and being in the business I am in now, I still get people that I'm cleaning up their trees and they go, oh, hey, how much would you charge us to demolition this building? And I have to go through all this stuff.
Mm.
So I'm seeing families that say, yeah, this building is just falling apart. It's got all my mom and dad's stuff and my grandpa and grandma's stuff in it. But we don't want any of it. Just demo it. So I'm going through legacies of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just interesting to see how the human nature is about keeping things that have no value
Mm-hmm.
except sentimental.
Right.
But on the other hand, you come across little trinkets that like, wow, you don't want this? Yeah, I'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll keep it for how long? And then who's gonna go through it when I die and say, well, where in the world did Dad get this?
Mm-hmm.
It was a legacy left behind a legacy behind a legacy. So it's just funny how you triggered a lot of thoughts about the ideas of
Yeah.
what we leave behind.
Yeah, there's various ways to look at it. One thing, it's like, if I can't find it, then why do I own it? I need it where I can find it. And that's part of my spring cleaning, to organize and redo so I can find stuff, as Adam is laughing. Because it just, I need to be in control of it instead of it in control of me. So, but yeah, Dave.
So one thing that spurred in my mind is the thought process of what kind of legacy are we leaving behind in how we treat our fellow men and how we treat our fellow families. And
Mhm.
oftentimes, when we talk about people and we talk about how we treat people, sometimes we treat, strangers better than we do our own families. And I've seen that over the years, even in how I treat my family, sometimes about how the things I say, do, and whatnot. And it's something that I feel like, as I work, as I get older, the things that I have said and done to them over the years is kind of despicable in my eyes of why would I treat them like that. If I treat people that I don't even know when I go into their homes to service their homes,
Mhm.
and then I treat them like that, how do I get away with that? Why do I do that? And so oftentimes, that's a challenge that I look at and see why do I do that? Why are we so careless with our own families sometimes versus strangers that we've never met? And it can be just simple things in words or in deeds or how we treat people. And it just, like you said, it floors your mind that when you're sweeping out the cobwebs of everyday cleanings and every year when we do the rituals of cleaning out for unleavened bread and Passover, why do we continue to hold on to certain things that don't make good legacies?
Mhm. Yeah, each year as I'm working, and of course I'm needing less in certain areas, getting older. And so just going a little deeper, and like, okay, and I picture like something I have, well, like what Randall was saying, is there something in me connected? If I get rid of this, can I get rid of what's in me that this may be attached to in some way? So, yeah, and it's like I'm going through stuff, and I had a group of people that had lost loved ones, and we got together after my mom passed, and it's like, my kids don't want those pictures. My kids don't want this stuff. I can't give it to them. What am I going to, they don't want it. And I'm like, I understand there's a lot of things my kids don't want either. So, just a process, and it just helps me, hopefully, internally when I work with that. Yes?
Something that you had said, you were talking about like the freedom of leaving things
Mm-hmm.
behind, and it kind of ties in, David, what you were saying. But I think even like, when it comes to pride, when it comes to maybe certain sin patterns that we think we have, we make the excuse of Christian liberty to hang on to things that are not beneficial to us, or even, downright sinful. And like you had said, having the courage to just walk away from those things.
Mm-hmm.
It does give you freedom. It does give you a degree of joy and happiness. I heard somebody say one time that he alone is happy who is seeking to be holy. And it's like, that's that garbage that he calls us to kind of, walk away from. And I think even probably Job was tempted a lot to despair, especially through something like that. And then even, his wife, saying, curse God and die, almost encouraging him to despair,
Mm-hmm.
almost, you know what I mean? But even walking away from thoughts like that and choosing to embrace God even when, things don't look so good, I think that's a real challenge that you kind of put on the table for us in that sense. And, like he was saying, really encouraging. And
thank you.
it was great to have that reminder, so.
Cynthia?
So I think about the Apostle Paul or any other Bible characters that we read about. In God's kingdom, are they going to be just totally blown away by the impact that their lives had on countless people because of what's recorded in the scriptures? And then I think about, what is going to be written about us?
Mm-hmm.
And, are we living those kinds of lives that are encouragements? I mean, David is going to be just so chagrined that everybody knows what he did, and it's there. It's right there where everybody can see it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that it's there so that we have the encouragement that, all these people were perfect and there's no hope for us.
Yeah.
It's there so that we're encouraged.
Right.
And I get that, but it's just, you think about what it's gonna be like in God's kingdom when we all start talking. how many people have we touched that we never had any concept?
Right.
You know, what impact that we had on them.
Mhm. Well, I think somebody else had their hand. I want to make a comment on David, what David said. I think, like when you go into a customer, you've got to be on good behavior. If you don't treat them well, they're just going to get somebody else. But we get so comfortable with our families, we kind of let that guard down and like, well, they're going to love us even if I'm not quite as nice today or whatever. And I don't think that's a good thing, but I think that's kind of how I see one perspective of that. Dave?
And then the thing I fire back is sometimes too, we allow ourselves to get in bad habits that when they trigger a response, we fire back with something that we know is not a good response.
Mhm.
And I think that's oftentimes what we do is we get ourselves in such an easy, comfortable zone with them that we are too quickly to fire back with the evil that's within us sometimes. And that's what I'm kind of saying is sometimes around family, we're too easy to allow our tongue loosen.
Right.
Because like if a customer will say something to me, I'm not gonna be so quick to cut them down
Right.
or tell them off because I need their business,
Mhm.
so that way I don't lose my job for the next customer.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that's my point is, so oftentimes you feel like, you know, I could have handled that better as a person and as an individual, and what kind of like, you know, as you said, we're all leaving a legacy. So are we teaching our children how to behave with their spouses by how we treat our spouses?
Yeah.
Or even our own family members for that case, you know?
Right.
Because, you know, when you have a big party or something happens and you don't handle a situation right, the children are sponges. They sponge
Right.
and they see everything, and they just they do exactly what their parents do. And if
Mhm.
you don't think so, just look at what they do and look what your children do and what the next children will do.
Right.
We all have tendencies to follow in our parents' footsteps and our great grandparents.
Mhm. Well, I saw Adam, but was there somebody back here first that I missed a hand? Okay, Adam. I thought you raised your hand. Okay, sorry. So, not yet. Any more comments? So, otherwise we'll close.
I got one.
Troy?
I think when it comes to our families and the expectations that we have of them, we set them a little bit higher than the people that we just come in contact with every day. We try to set that example and leave behind a legacy of what they should strive for. It's not that we are more critical with them because we expect more of them out of love and stuff like that. And I see that same way with the Father. I think he set a standard up here so high that we have to strive for it each and every day and not relax on that opportunity to leave something better. Other people, we treat them right. I don't really want anything out of them, but out of my family, I expect respect, first and foremost to the Most High. Respect your elders, respect other people's rights, and, walk as he walked. That's what I want to leave behind. A legacy of
Yes. Yes.
what he has done to me.
Right.
There's a lot of other stuff I like to just talk about. I can run those trash bags or whatever.
Uh-huh.
I don't want anybody digging for it though.
Yeah. Okay, I guess we should close now, so thank you.
Thank you.
You can push it in.
Thank you.